What's up? I'm Coach Dan Blewett. In today's video, let's talk about positions in baseball and some of the demands and the skill sets and some of the body types that will put players into three different bins that will help you understand which baseball position is right for you, which one's not, and what kind of skill set that you have so that you can be the best version of yourself. All right, so what we're going to cover today, skills and body type, being true to yourself, fitting in a lineup, and lastly, we'll talk about what scouts want. So definitely stick around to the end of this presentation because we'll talk about how this is going to impact you and your future prospects for college or pro baseball. So number one, why does this matter? You need to fit a role in your team. You also want to be your best self. That's important. So if you're doing things that don't really fit your skill set, like if you're really slow and you're playing the outfield, you're not going to be doing anyone any favors, especially yourself if a scout were to come watch you there. Or if you're not a really good, strong infielder and maybe you're really fast, maybe you should be in the outfield, stuff like that. So here's a quick poll, and really just a question for you there, but what's the most athletic player? Where do they play on the field? So typically, and I mean this is without exception, pretty much in the major leagues, is shortstop or center fielder, and this is because those positions require such range, and so range requires explosiveness, first step quickness, and raw speed. Shortstop requires a little bit less raw speed than center field does, obviously. But those positions require so much athleticism going left to right, front, back, arm strength, hand-eye coordination, like amazing fielding skills. That's why you see the Mike Trouts and the Francisco Lindors playing shortstop and center field. Obviously, there's always exceptions. And of course, the major league, everyone is a super athlete, but these players are still heads and tails above the rest. Just like if you go to watch, I remember I went to watch an NBA game with the Oklahoma City Thunder playing they were playing in Philly. I don't even remember Philly's team's name, but the 76ers. And Kevin Durant was just so much more athletic than everyone else on the court. And this is even in the NBA. Just the way that dude glided, the way he jumped, just the way he moved. You're like, that guy sticks out even amongst NBA players who are amazing athletes, right? Like he was more athletic than anyone else on that court. And this was when he was really young still, early in his career. And obviously he proved to be an amazing NBA player over the course of his career. And this still happens in the major leagues. Like guys will tell you that these guys that can play shortstop, guys like Mike Trout, are just like, they're better athletes than even the rest of them who are, again, already super athletes. So let's put everyone into a couple of different bins here. So with position players, there's kind of like three bins. So athletic and scrappy and fast, and it doesn't really matter how big you are. That could be second base, that could be center field, and we'll talk about that more in a second. But in bin one, again, you're athletic, you're scrappy. It doesn't really matter your size because you're not going to be hitting for power necessarily. In bin two, you're going to be athletic, but a little more powerful and a little bigger. And we'll talk about the positions that go there because it's not going to be your typical shortstop. That's not going to be your typical center fielder. And then bin number three, you can probably guess which positions go here, which is you're really powerful and you're a big-bodied person and your speed's not as much important. So in bin one, fast and scrappy players who just are really explosive, they're maybe more fielding-centric, is center field, second base, shortstop, right? Dustin Pedroia, Jose Altuve, and I know Jose Altuve can hit 30 home runs if he wants to, but it's these smaller players. David Eckstein is a great example. Guys that provide a lot of quality to their team, and this happens all the way down at younger levels. If you have an amazing center fielder who's 120 pounds, but he can go get the ball and run down stuff, and it provides a lot of value to your team. And same at second base or shortstop, which if you have great fielding up the middle, you'll sacrifice some physicality, right? You don't need as many doubles and home runs out of your second baseman or your center fielder if they're really making a lot of plays and saving you outs on the field. So that's important. So just remember, if you're not a huge-bodied kid, but you can get on base a lot, you can steal bases, you're a great fielder, you can really go get the ball, this is the bin for you as one of these three positions probably. Bin number two, where you have some power, but you're still pretty athletic but you're a little bit bigger. This is typically the corner outfield and third base. So guys like Nolan Arenado, obviously I think Nolan Arenado could play short at the big league level, but he might not have as quick as first step as someone like, I keep using Francisco Lindor as a good example, but When you're 6'2" or 6'3", it's just hard to play shortstop because you have to have such range, and you're just a bigger body with bigger limbs, and they'd rather probably get 35 or 40 home runs out of a third baseman who packs on a little more muscle, and let the shortstop be a little scrappier because they have players like that can do that, right? So, and the same thing with corner outfielders. Like if Bryce Harper, cut down a little bit of weight, maybe he'd be fast enough to play center field, but he's, paid to hit a few more home runs than the center fielder might be, right? Mike Trout's an exception. He can do it all, but most center fielders can't. Obviously Mookie Betts can also do it all. But anyway, there's just the typical body types where you don't have to range as far. That's the big thing here. Third base, your range is not as much, so you can be a little bigger bodied. You can have a little less range. Left field and right field, same thing. You're not going nearly as far for the typical fly ball as a center fielder is. So you can have an extra 10, 15 pounds on your frame, which can add another 5, 10 home runs potentially to a high-level player. And that's a good trade-off for that team because they don't really need you to be a burner. They don't need you to be Trey Turner running 31 feet per second in right field. I know he's a shortstop. They don't necessarily need that because you're going to run into foul territory, right? So having that bigger frame with some more pop makes a lot of sense for the second bin. And then for the third bin, this is sort of first baseman and catcher where it doesn't really matter how fast you are. Like Pete Alonso is not paid to leg out triples. Pete Alonso is not paid to beat out infield ground balls. He's not paid to run down balls in the gap. That's why he plays first base. Pete Alonso is paid to hit the ball hard in the air, put it into the bleachers, put it into the gaps, right? So if he puts the ball into the gap, he's going to get to second base. He's not that slow where he can't leg out a double, obviously, right? So obviously the big league level, those guys are still faster than you'd probably think because they're such good athletes. But again, Pete Alonso doesn't need to hit triples. He doesn't need to, but he does need to score from second on a single if he can, right? On most singles. But again, speed's is not a factor. They're not going to not draft Pete Alonso because he runs a 7.8 60 or something, right? That's not going to matter. So these two positions are important. But again, if you're a really big-bodied guy and you want to play left field, it just might even be a bad position for you. Or if you're Pete Alonso, are you going to play third base? It's probably not going to fit very well. He's going to make too many errors. His range is not going to be as good. Well, he might not make that many errors, but his range might not be good enough to play third base. Whereas first baseman, yeah, it's kind of the same position, but it's not really as much the same position because there's a lot more right-handed hitters than left-handed hitters. So why does this all matter? You're going to underperform if you're in the wrong position. So again, if you have lots of speed, but you're not a great glove, or if you're a little bigger bodied and you're not quite as fast, you need to pick a position that's going to fit that. So, baseball positions, they a lot of times pick the player, and players don't as much pick the position because, again, like if you're short and fast and not that big, you don't have that many options. You're not going to be able to play third base in college because they want a bigger body person there who can hit some home runs and can give them the lineup some power. They need to sort of fill out those things. They need to get power somewhere in the lineup, 3, 4, 5. So where do those 3, 4, 5 hitters play typically? Corners, like, corner outfield, corner infield. That's typically where they play because they don't have to have as much range. They can pack on some weight and not hurt their defensive performance. And so it's just a matter of understanding, again, I'll go back here, which bin do you fit into? Ask yourself this. If you're a little bigger bodied and you're maybe a tick too slow to play shortstop, okay, hit some more dingers, put the ball in the gap and play a great third base, and that's okay. But if you're constantly trying to play short, you just might underperform there and it might not be a good position for you. So why does this matter? I mean, teams want roles. They want efficiency, and what that means is, sure, if they could have, top 1 through 9 all Mike Trouts, obviously they would take it, but it's not realistic to have that. And so, if they have a big hitter like an Aaron Judge, like a Giancarlo Stanton, like a Pete Alonso, they want guys on base, obviously. This is nothing new. I'm not telling you anything new with that. So if you're a center fielder or you're a second baseman, you're fast and scrappy, just get on base. And if you're on base, when he hits the ball into the gap or into the bleachers, you've done your job, right? So you want to fit somewhere on that team, somewhere within those roles. They just need guys on base when guys are going to hit the ball in the gap. And they need guys that can hit the ball in the gap or into the bleachers, right? So, and if you're a catcher, they need you to be a great catcher first defensively, and then a great hitter second, and then a great base runner third, right? So offense versus defense, speed versus power, everyone fits their own role. And so it's just important to understand where you can fit in with your given talents and try to fit some role on the field really well. If you're not real big, but you are really fast and scrappy, you're that bin one kind of player, then hone your skills at second base, hone your skills at center field, right? Be where you can be on the field and be at your best. And I think at the end of the day, scouts are going to ask, because I've been asked this question many, many times, and you go to a field and you watch the game kind of like I have because I've played for a long time, is someone might say, hey, can you watch this varsity shortstop? Do you think you can play in college? Like, do you think you can play at our level? This is what you'll get from coaches that trust you. They'll say, hey, you're talking to a Division II coach that plays in a good conference. They'll be like, okay, can that pitcher pitch at our level? Can that position player, can he hit at our level? Is his swing good enough for our level? And you'll say yes or no. And so when you look at a shortstop or a center fielder and guy says, yeah, can he play center field at the Division I level? And you'll be like, nah, he's not fast enough. Can he play third base at the Division I level? Nah, he doesn't have the arm strength. Hey, can that catcher catch at the Division I level? Nah, he lets too many balls go to the screen. That's what they start to ask these coaches at lower levels to say, how good is this kid and can they do it at the next level? And that's where, again, you might be successful in high school as a first baseman, but if you're too skinny, you don't really have any power, you don't really fit the profile of a first baseman because you're a bin 1 player playing a bin 3 position, then how's that going to fit, right? Like if you're a skinny kid playing third base and you don't have much pop there either, they're going to say, can you play third at the next level, at the Division I level or something? He doesn't have the pop to play third. I mean, you might have to stick him in the outfield. Like, we don't really know where he fits. And that's a problem too. If you don't have a position, it could be a big dead end. And this is how a lot of guys' pro careers end. A lot of really good college players, and I had a teammate like this who had a really good bat. He had over 300, I think his last 3 years in college, like 20 doubles, really good hitter. He didn't have a position in pro ball. And this is what players told him. Like, he wasn't big enough to play first base in pro ball, didn't hit enough home runs. He was pretty fast for his size, like being like a pretty muscular dude, but he didn't have the arm strength or the fielding ability to play the infield in pro ball, and he wasn't fast enough to be an outfielder. So it was like he was kind of in no man's land, where he like was a good college first baseman, and you could fill him in the outfield in college, but he just like wasn't good enough to play a pro position at those levels. And that happens to a lot of high school players as well, as they try to find a fit in college, is that, yeah, he's a nice looking player, but he couldn't play short at our level. He couldn't play outfield at our level. He's too slow. Or he couldn't play third. He doesn't have the arm strength for it. Or he couldn't play first because he can't hit enough to play first. We've got a kid who can play first and he hits 15 home runs for us. So that's important. You don't want to dead end yourself being really good at a position that you won't be able to play at the next level if you really do want to play at the next level. All right. So hopefully today's video is helpful. I think these things are important as far as like college recruiting and college prep, and knowing which position is right for you, whether it's infield, outfield, whether you're fast and scrappy or you're kind of that in between, like a third baseman, like a Nolan Arenado type or a Bryce Harper type. Where do you fit and what positions are going to make sense? And you want to get really good at those ones, so when scouts come to watch you play, they can see, okay, yeah, this makes sense. I could definitely see him playing third base at the next level. All right. So thanks for watching. Leave a comment below. If you have any questions, leave one there as well. Again, I'm Coach Dan. You'll find my resources and other videos, online courses, and books in the description, and I'll see you here in the next video.